The world has seen its fair share of locomotives which are considered odd, peculiar, and straight up weird. This can be due to their unusual mechanics, such as in the fields of boiler designs and wheel arrangements, or their overall look being nothing like the world has ever seen. However, out of all the oddities of locomotives which railroads had, none are as interesting, unorthodox, and infamous as the two locomotives built by the Holman Locomotive Company, commonly referred to as the Holman Horror. In the early decades of railroading, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller locomotive builders in one region which made locomotives for many small routes in the area. Such historical examples during these decades included Rhode Island, Schenectady, Pittsburgh, and Taunton. However, some of these companies go beyond the norm of producing average run-of-the-mill locomotives, as some of their designs incorporate new, revolutionary techniques in hopes that they will be used around the world. One of these companies was the Holman Locomotive Company in Philadelphia, owned by William J. Holman, who focused their efforts on efficient locomotive trucks. Close to the turn of the 20th century, the talk of the town among locomotive builders was to reach the unattainable 100 miles per hour, and Holman felt that his unique and perfected Holman trucks would do the trick. Now, an average steam locomotive wheel arrangement would consist of one or two pilot trucks at the front, larger wheels in the middle known as driver wheels which move the locomotive forward or backwards, and sometimes another set of smaller pilot wheels near the firebox and cab in order to support the weight of the engine and to balance it out. The Holman design, however, included 5 friction-geared wheels per axle, in which the driver wheels would rest on top of 2 more smaller driver wheels, which were on top of another set of driver wheels, all connected by numerous gears, and with larger pilot wheels to balance the height difference caused by the addition of 2 layers of driver wheels. Holman claimed that with the strength of the main driver wheels being divided by the smaller wheels, thus distributing the locomotive's weight and piston force while placing less stress on the tracks and reducing track maintenance. This would extend the lifespan of the engine itself, since only half the number of wheel turns, or revolutions, are required to cover a given distance, and would even increase top speeds to 100 miles per hour, and save on fuel consumption. In order to put these claims to the test, a standard Baldwin steam locomotive was leased to Holman by the Sioux Line in 1894, where the company heavily modified it with the Holman trucks, thus giving it a technical wheel arrangement of a 612-0, thus making it the only 612-0 in the world for that matter. Although few actually witnessed the locomotive's performance in Indiana, Holman self-declared the test run a success, and the claims of the Holman truck's efficiency, including reducing track maintenance, bouncing the locomotive, and even reaching up to 120 miles per hour, was soon published all around the US and Europe, as Holman sold stock in the Holman Locomotive Speeding Truck Company. Their capital stock was $10 million. They offered to sell the stock for $25 a share, the par value being $100, and made the claim that their truck is destined to come into general use on every locomotive of the future. Despite some investors taking interest in the concept, many mechanical engineers and railroadmen saw the claims as dubious, due to basic laws of physics not allowing such speed to be obtained with 3 layers of driving wheels. The majority of the comments of this design were not good, to say the least, with one example at the time being, "The editor must know it is Claude nonsense, impossible on mechanical grounds, and a freak on all other grounds. A portrait of the inventor would have had more interest." Nevertheless, Holman acquired another steam locomotive to be fitted with the Holman trucks to impress investors in 1897, this time on the southern tip of New Jersey on the Pennsylvania-Reading Seashore Line Bridge. An ordinary Baldwin Class 834C type would be raised 35 inches from the rails by the Holman friction truck under each pair of drivers, and be given a large cowcatcher to make up for the height difference, as well as a cab barely reaching the tender, and would run on the railroad's Atlantic City branch from Winslow Junction to Cape May on October 14, 1897. The train left Winslow Junction at 9:09 a.m. and reached Cape May Station at 10:05, but reached a recorded top speed of 87 miles per hour near Cape May, thus making claims of 120 miles per hour extremely unlikely. Additionally, tracking the speed of a locomotive at the time was not entirely accurate, and speed was measured by timing the passing of trackside mile markers or telegraph poles with a pocket watch. Despite Holman claiming the test to be a success again, the overwhelming drawbacks and criticisms came in almost immediately. One of the main problems with the Holman truck is that it raised the locomotive 2 stories, thus requiring the entire route of the locomotive, including when it ran in New Jersey, to be modified in order to meet the height clearance. This excessive height even made the locomotive top-heavy and would make the slightest derailment, as well as the malfunction of any of the numerous gears in the trucks, a disaster. Seeing the excessive amounts of disadvantages overweighing the few, if any, advantages to the design, as well as how cheaply their stocks were being sold for, the Holman company was seen as a stunt in stock fraud in order to attract gullible investors to give money for an unsuccessful concept. With this truth exposed, hundreds of railwaymen, journalists, and mechanical engineers unleashed a fury of criticism and outrage of the locomotive, unlike that of any lemon ever produced. The Holman speeding truck is founded upon a fallacy and does not have the meager merit of novelty to recommend it. The Holman locomotive has not been taken seriously by railroad men. It appears to sensible men as a joke. A triple set of wheels under a locomotive would be proposed by only one who is densely ignorant of mechanics. The Holman scheme is about as flagrant a piece of nonsense as ever pretended to be a locomotive. Holman then tried to sell 2 more locomotives to the South Railroad of New Jersey, but this deal was cancelled after much public outcry, and the Holman company went out of business shortly thereafter and disappeared into obscurity. Meanwhile, the Holman locomotive, which was tested on South Jersey, was returned to Baldwin and was reconverted back to a 440 and was sold to the Kansas City and Northern Connecting Railroad, where it worked for the rest of its days. The original Holman horror was presumably given back to Sioux Line after being reconverted back to a 440, with both locomotives being presumed scrapped after a few more decades of work. The Holman company was shady for most of its existence, as many speculated that its existence was to sell stocks rather than produce efficient locomotives. Even more so, the company refused admission of their test runs to anyone who had expressed negative opinions and to some who looked skeptical. Despite this blaringly obvious attempt at stock fraud, one must consider the 2 heavily modified locomotives as an attempt of incorporating a new, out-of-the-box concept for railroad locomotives. Prior to being one of the most infamous locomotives to ever be produced and received the largest amount of criticism from journalists and railroadmen alike, these 2 locomotives at least showcase a concept so odd in mechanics that it would be wrong to leave them out of the history books, as an example of what not to do when creating new technology for locomotives. Thank you all for watching this episode of Remarkable Engines. These 2 Holman humbugs are considered remarkable in the sense of introducing a new concept in locomotive design which attempted to become the standard of the world. However, as Angus Sinclair put in 1907, when we first heard of the Holman locomotive, we supposed that it was the invention of some harmless crank who did not understand the elementary principles of mechanics, but we now believe that it has been, since its inception, an ostentatious machine designed to allure unwary capitalists into an investment which will be of the same real value as throwing gold coins over Niagara Falls. This oddity in railroading serves as a remarkably infamous example of an unorthodox concept in locomotive engineering, all to sell stocks instead of producing a reliable design. Thank you again for watching, and stay tuned next time when I cover Green Mountain 405. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Have a good day.